get us started. This is the Clinical Consultation Network. We do this every Tuesday at 12:30. Sometimes we do it on different days of the week, too. Sometimes we have a follow-up session at times. But generally, we do it at 12:30 on Tuesday, so we're happy to have everyone here. Looks like we've got a great crowd for today's presentation, which is going to be really interesting about a program called BrainLinks. BrainLinks has some folks here that are involved with that. Wendy Elmo is here to make a presentation for us about this, about a very important topic, traumatic brain injury. And in fact, people in our system, in the IDD system, often deal with a lot of issues related to traumatic brain injury, particularly those traumatic brain injuries that may occur during the developmental period and actually make them eligible for IDD services. So we're happy today to have Wendy Elmo with us, and Wendy is with this BrainLinks program. And Wendy, welcome. Glad to have you here today. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself, including an interesting fact nobody else might know about you?
Michelle warned me about this, and this is tough. Like, I told her, when you've lived a bit of a life, it's hard to pick one thing. So I picked three really fast ones, and then you can decide whether you want to dig into anything. But I have dissected a human brain, which probably isn't a big deal for you, but as a speech pathologist, that's a big deal. I'm currently digging a rain garden, and I broke my back, but didn't find out about it for 34 years. So
whoa. Okay. Now, what was the second fact? Go back and repeat that one.
I'm currently digging a rain garden, it's called.
A rain garden. Okay. Tell us more about that one.
A rain garden is, so we live on a little bit of a slope, not a big deal, but when it rains, the rain goes just flying down, all the water goes flying down the property into a stream, the stream overflows, and there is a move in Tennessee, but also around the world, for people to plant rain gardens, which is you dig it down so that the plants are about 6 inches below the top of the plant, about 6 inches below the surface. You put good dirt in there with rocks and sand, and the water goes into that. So you're capturing some so that it gets cleaned before going down into the stream. And then you're holding some on the property for a while.
Wow, that's very interesting. That is a very interesting fact. And then you broke your back.
Yes.
But didn't know it?
Yes, I didn't know it for somewhere around 34 years. I went to a chiropractor just maybe 2 or 3 years ago, and I've been to chiropractors through the years, and because I had pain issues, and he said, "When did you break your back?" And I said, "I didn't break my back." And he said, "You sure did." And he flipped the monitor around to show me, and I said, "Well, that was only one time that could have happened. When I was 17, I was thrown out of a car. And since that time, I've had neck and back issues. I kind of come and go and all of that." But he said that, and I went, "Oh, that just makes a whole lot of sense." It put things together for my life. Yeah,
so, probably you experienced some extreme pain and just didn't know that it was related to the broken back. Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
Well,
yeah.
I think you may be setting some new records for most interesting facts, man. That's very interesting. And so thank you for sharing that. Now, why don't you tell us just a little bit about your background and what it is you're doing here with BrainLinks?
Sure. I am a speech pathologist, and I worked in a brain trauma unit as a cognitive therapist and speech pathologist for 20 years. Brain injury is just an absolute passion of mine. And when I came to Tennessee, I'm from New Jersey and then North Carolina, and then here, I found BrainLinks. And actually, it was Project Brain at that point. But now what we do is we provide education, information, resources, training to professionals like you all on this call, anybody who might work with people who have had a traumatic brain injury. But I want to expand that. So don't just think of us as a resource for traumatic brain injury, but also cognition. So you all, from what I understand, you serve a lot of people who have cognitive issues, thinking issues, and we can help there too.
Yeah, and well, I'm going to say in a lot of cases we don't have a lot of neurological information about people, and we do have a lot of people who, even though they might not have had a traumatic event that caused a brain injury, they still are going to show a lot of similar neurological signs and structural differences based on other things that may have occurred in their development. So it's, I think, very relevant to a lot of the things that go on within our population. And I'm very glad you came here today to share it with us. So do you have a presentation that you want to go to at this point?
I do.
Okay.
And let me start to share.
One of my bad habits is I tend to interrupt a few times just to ask a few questions, but usually just kind of keep the timer going a little bit. Sometimes I might ask about breaking from time to time.
That'd be great. Sure, that'd be great. Terrific. So let me go back a couple. And so here's who we are. And so here's our funding. We're a grant-based program, which is really great because that means that our services are provided free to anybody that we work with. So there's no cost. And we're funded at the federal level by the Administration for Community Living and by the State of Tennessee Traumatic Brain Injury Program at the state level. And like I said, this is who we are, a statewide team. We have lots of family-friendly educational materials that you can use, resources for returning people to a program or to school or to work, toolkits for healthcare providers. So if you work with providers and they need to understand more about traumatic brain injury or concussion, because we're also concerned about your folks that fall and hit their heads or through self-harm, they injure themselves. And we also have a YouTube training channel playlist just for you. So there's things that are there. We've been working with the IDD for a while now.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Go back to that slide just for a second. There was something I want to ask about.
All right.
Quickly.
I'm trying.
Well, I don't want to do that.
Let's see.
I know what it was, though. That's all right. Don't worry about going back. So you're affiliated with the Department of Health. We've had quite a bit of affiliation with them recently because they've been assisting us with the COVID-19 testing that we've been doing. But so this is a program sponsored by the Department of Health through the state, and is that the way to say it?
We receive a portion of funding through them, yes, and we're overseen at the state level through them.
Okay, very good.
No, it doesn't even want to move on. Let me back out a second.
I'm seeing a slide that's introducing everybody.
With the team? Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, I seem to be stuck there at the moment. So this is our team. We are across the state. We have Carrie, and they're all on the call right now. Carrie is from West, I'm in Middle, and then Jennifer is in East, and Paula Denslow is our program director, and she's in Middle here with me. And I have there it goes. All right, so what I was hoping to do today is just give you an overview of who we are so you understand why you might come to us, what we might be able to help you with, talk about some of the topics that we talk about that we can train on, our resources that are both from us and other resources within the state, and then maybe do some questions and brainstorming at the end to see ways that we might be able to help you more. So like I said, we provide things at no cost, and we can train the trainer. We're really interested in trying to help you with things that can stay in place over time, so that if our grant goes away or you have more people, new people, obviously all the time coming on, there's some resource there for them. And then we can help you to locate resources and referrals, particular to who you're working with and who you serve at that time, and then provide training to the providers that work with you. So let's say that there's a physical therapist in the community that you work with a lot and they don't understand something about cognition or traumatic brain injury, concussion. We can help there as well, training them. So some of the things that we talk about train on are concussion, traumatic brain injury, falls, brain health, mild cognitive impairment and stroke, cognitive changes. How do you support the cognition in someone? And for me, those two of those, brain health and cognitive changes, are so important, I think, for the people that you serve in particular. Behavior and psychosocial issues we talk about, and we come from maybe a different perspective than the folks that you already have working with you. So we're not trying to do what they do. We are trying to just give you another look at it. So I'll talk about that in a minute. We're going to come from a different angle on that behavioral and psychosocial issues. And then for nursing, we have a concussion screening, helping them to understand what to look for when the person returns home from maybe the emergency department. When do you look for referrals? And then how do you assess pain? You're trying to figure out if somebody's had a concussion or not. Or a TBI, how do you figure out what pain looks like in someone who communicates without words? And we have learned person-centered practice from the best. We came to you all. We took your training, so we've all been through it. And go DIDD. So we're trying to incorporate all of those principles and practices into everything that we do as well. So one of the things we talk about is concussion. How do you identify concussion in someone who already has something? Maybe it's even some cognitive impairment, a mild cognitive impairment. How do you figure that out? What might you be looking for? And so we can go into that. What kinds of symptoms are you looking for? What are the danger signs? Things like, and then help you to understand what's your protocol. Do you have a protocol and what is it, and help you understand how to implement it.
That's one of the things you mentioned something there. I think it's really important because we deal with something called diagnostic overshadowing, which is when a person has a diagnosis of ID. A lot of times people aren't looking any further or thinking about maybe if they've even had something that might be a concussion or some other type of problem. Not thinking about what the impact of that might be because they're already kind of baking into the cake that they have a brain disorder, essentially. And so under this, I think one of the things that's really important is recognizing that regardless of who you are, that those things can have an impact on how you function going forward and change.
Absolutely. And if you look at this next one, we share a model of 6 types of concussion. So imagine being someone who already has some issue, and now you put a vestibular, a balance issue on top of that, or you put an ocular motor issue on top of that, and that can be really hard to deal with. And you might think, well, I don't know that we're really going to even treat the concussion because they already have other things going on. They're maybe worse than a concussion, or a bigger deal they seem than a concussion. But some of these symptoms can be so overwhelming and disorienting. They're worth treating.
So are these different types related to the area of the brain that the concussion affects? Is that basically how that operates?
Yes. It'll be dependent on the force of the injury, the rotational forces. Was it a linear, so your head struck straight on? Was it rotating? And then where on the head that you hit. Yeah, it'll depend. So you won't see these within the first week. It'll be generalized symptoms, but then they'll shake out into one or more of these symptoms, symptom tracks. So we can talk about that. And then the really exciting thing for me, for all of us about this, is that there is treatment. So there's still a belief in the concussion world, when we think about concussion, that there's nothing that you could do about it. So maybe I'll go to the hospital and make sure that I'm okay, but then there's nothing I can do. There's lots of evidence-based treatment that you can work with. And we can try to help you figure out ways that you can, maybe somebody can't go to a PT, or it wouldn't work well in that environment. How else can we do it? What can we do? the fascinating thing about me about this, and I don't want to go into too deeply on this because I want to get you excited about what we might talk and go further into. But exercise is one thing. Cardiovascular exercise is one thing that seems to improve all the different types. It doesn't come up under ocular motor. My bet is that it will in time. We just need more research. And the thinking is that it's restoring oxygen to the brain and helping everything to repair.
Yeah, it's often a mental health prescription that's made is to do more exercise, and so it's not surprising that would help. But interesting to know that it goes beyond just a mental aspect of this, but actually may help improve brain function.
Yes. Yeah, and it's been pretty well proven at this point. It'll improve your symptoms. It'll shorten your symptoms. We'll talk about concussion in older adults. They're much more susceptible to fall, and they're more likely to have an intracranial bleed. So what is that, and how do you get it treated? What are you looking for when they come back to the program? We have signs and symptoms. So this is signs and symptoms for adults. This is for concussion. Help you to understand what are you looking for, what are the danger signs, the information about adults is on there. And then this next one is the same thing, but we call it the WOW. It's for people who communicate without words, the WSW. So, and this came directly off, there's a few things in here that came directly with working with DIDD. And this is one, and this was, so what do you do? How do you diagnose it? We're not that we're looking to diagnose it. But what are we looking for? The person is there. How are we trying to figure out if they have ongoing symptoms when they've come back home? What are we looking for? And how do we assess pain? How do we tell that someone is in pain? Or what do you look for in someone who communicates without words?
That's a really important thing for people with IDD, because so many of the people that we serve are people who communicate without words.
Yeah. So how do you tell something's different? And then this is, so the CDC has a letter for returning people to school. And it's a great letter. It helps the school to understand what were the symptoms, what can you do about it. What we did was in working with you all and with programs that work with older adults, adult daycares and assisted living, nursing homes, and working with them, we figured out that, you need information coming back from the hospital too, or from the physician. So we just modified the CDC's form that it has the symptoms and it has what could you try when the person comes back. How do you compensate for their symptoms, and then a reminder of the danger signs. So that's there as well. There's a symptom tracker. We use it for cognitive symptoms, but you can use it for any sort of symptom that you want. But it's usually it's like for a headache and what was going on and what did you try and what was their pain level and did it have any impact. So just good information that you can start to gather for when they're going to be going back to the doctor and he wants information or she wants information. This is...
Can I interrupt for just a second? So we had a couple questions in the chat box. Are these handouts available on the website?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
And I'll rely on my team to say no, but yeah, they're all there.
Okay. I know Paula put the link for the website, I believe, in her original comment. So if you guys scroll up in the chat box, I sent it. That's the link to the resources.
They are on it. They are on it. They've got my back. This one is probably, scroll down to this. Okay. This one is probably either there or coming. This is hot off the presses. As you can see, I've still got the image in there with the background stuff on it. But this is now finalized, and this is for when concussion symptoms aren't going away. So for us, we're always running into people who are months and sometimes years after a significant injury, and they've been struggling with symptoms and they didn't know what to do about it. They didn't even know it went back to the injury because they've just been sent home. So this is kind of like, well, what are you looking for over time? This is our one for adults, and some of it may not be relevant. Some of it is returning to school, There is some information also there on returning to work, but also older adults. So just great tools to be able to consult. We had come up with, based on all of the literature, we came up with a physician's concussion protocol. So why am I showing it to you? We've now got it in front of many, many physicians in the state, hundreds at this point, but it's not something that is universally known. So we want you knowing about it. So let's say there's a 4 weeks recommendation here. If your symptoms haven't cleared within 4 weeks, most of them are going to clear for most people within 4 weeks. So if they haven't, then it's probably time to go looking for, if you haven't done it already, go looking for a referral to a symptom specialist. So it's just so that you can have more information about what are you looking for and what do you do about it, and what should you expect the physician to be doing, or the primary care provider.
So are you saying here you should have 2 visits if you have had a concussion? You wouldn't go to the first visit and say, oh, well, okay, you gave me some information here and I'm good to go. You need to go back again for a second visit at least 4 weeks later. If your symptoms have not cleared, yeah. Okay, I see. Okay.
Yeah, because then hopefully they're going to be able to give you, what you want to do at that point is get to a symptom-specific specialist. So if it's a balance issue, you want to get to the PT. If it's because what we hear as we go across the state talking to all different kinds of groups is they'll say, well, we can't get people into neurologists, or neurologists won't take a, quote-unquote simple concussion. And this is different ones in different areas. So this is a reminder that maybe you don't need to go through, and maybe the primary care provider doesn't need to refer to a neurologist. Maybe it can be directly to the physical therapist because those are the symptoms. Or if they're eye symptoms, maybe we go right to the neuro-ophthalmologist or an occupational therapist trained in eyes. So it's that reminder of, going and getting help, not letting them just hang around the symptoms. People do better with early education about what's happening. They tend not to kind of hold on to them. I call it touching the bruise. They go back and they're like, is it still there? Is it still there? And it has this way of kind of reinforcing it and making symptoms prolonged. That's not the only reason, but. All right, so I talked about having a screening for nurses. The CDC has a great one, again, for school nurses, but what about our older folks? What we did was, we know that children, when they have a concussion, it's often because they fell off the jungle gym, or the little child stood up underneath the desk, and hit their head. But with older adults, we often just find them on the floor. Well, how did they get there? Why did they get there? And so what we've included on this one is if there's a nurse around, what's their pulse like, what's their blood pressure? Because we know that if people have blood pressure issues, they can stand up, right? And then they might fall to the ground. So because their blood pressure has been dropped. So maybe we need to figure out if there's some underlying issue that caused them to fall. So again, this one came from working with a group of nurses that provide services to people with IDD, and we are they have incorporated this into what they do, and they were very excited to kind of get this information, because the first instinct that people have is get them off the floor, help them, stand them up, and that might not be good. Looks like you had a question for me.
Yeah, let me inquire about one thing on this slide, because it says the cause of or the outcome of the fall. So these you're listening to things that may be the cause, but I just am interested in how would they become the outcome of the fall, or how would that play into a concussion, essentially?
Well, like the symptoms might have occurred after the fall, so they might be disoriented, they might be confused, they might have word-finding problems, attentional issues. Their alertness maybe happened after the fall. Maybe anxiety causes their pulse to race.
Yeah, okay, very good.
And some, we won't know. Did it happen before or after? We can help you with identifying strokes, helping people to understand those symptoms, again, with an aging population. How do you recognize that? How do you recognize it in women versus men? It's a little bit different, just like heart attack. How do we recognize it? And then what we do is we also incorporate cases. So this one helps to kind of help us understand what if we do come across someone, they're lying on the floor. What is your protocol? How can you help to figure out what's going on with her? Again, we're not trying to diagnose, but what are we doing here in this moment? So we bring in case studies. And then this one, understanding cognition, for me, so I came into my first job as a cognitive therapist with a master's degree in speech pathology, with some level of understanding of cognition, and still blown away by who I was working with, just overwhelmed. And so when I learned about all of you going in and working with people, I was overwhelmed for you. So what we did was we put together a module on cognition. What is it? Because if you can understand the cognition and understand that, okay, that's because of their attention, or that's because they're having a problem-solving issue, or for me, perseveration. So perseveration is getting stuck. And we work with a lot of people who get stuck on something. They either want to talk about the same thing every day, and they want to do the same thing every day. And that can be so frustrating. And once we really understand, it's the brain. It's the brain that's stuck. So it's easier to kind of not be so frustrated at it when you understand where it's coming from. So we talk about attention. People will say, well, his attention is terrible. About his attention. We need to understand that it's a much bigger skill, different aspects to it, so we can really help figure out what's going on. And we'll do this for memory and for all the different areas of attention.
So are these, how long, how much, how hard, is that related to the type of task that a person's trying to do, that they're trying to deal with at that point, and how their attention is different based on those different characteristics?
Or just, so possibly, yes. So maybe in one environment, they're able, maybe we're doing some job training, and in one environment, they do great. We're in the training room, and it's awesome, and then we take them actually into that setting where there's all kinds of noise and visual distractions. Maybe the noise is okay, but not the visual. Maybe the visual is okay, but not the noise. So it's understanding all of that and understanding, well, why did it break down? And so having the knowledge to kind of analyze the task and look at the person's overall behavior and figure out what's a strength, what's a weakness. And we tend to focus on weaknesses, but we really need to understand the strengths because that's what we're going to use to help the person.
So rather than being related to tasks, these are actually measures of how well the person is participating, or how well they're able to do the task. How long can they participate? How much can they do within a certain span of time? How hard a task can they carry out? Is that?
Yes, that would be good information.
Correct me if I'm saying the wrong one.
No, that would be really good information to have. And what we did was we developed this brainstorming solutions tool, again, working with groups like yours so it's not meant to give extra work. It's meant to be a problem-solving template. I'm working with someone and they're having some difficulty with what we're doing. What could it be? What's happening? So this could be something that, for me, this template is in my head. Right after doing it, we all have templates in our head for things that we do day in and day out kind of thing. Well, this template got into my head, but it's not that way for everybody. So we put it down on paper so that if you need to fill it out, you can fill it out. If you want to look at it, you can just look at it. And it goes through all of the different cognitive areas, all the different thinking, they're all there. So you can go, oh, I didn't realize it. They do have difficulty speaking, for instance, and we put language in there as well. They do have difficulty speaking. So maybe let me break that down. That might be a factor here. And then we also go through, well, vision could be impacting what's happening, motor ability, social, emotional, things like that. And then considering recent changes. And maybe they fell, and we've forgotten all about it because it was 3 days ago, and they were checked out by the doctor, and they seemed fine. But now we realize, this makes us think, it has been since then.
And one of the things that was interesting on an earlier slide, I noticed that it said that you should not rule out a concussion or a brain injury just because the person didn't fall on their head or didn't have a head injury. The fall may have been a typical, another type of fall that injured another part of the body, but still could have had an impact on the brain.
Right. And that would be some of the information we would go into as well, is that you don't need to hit your head. So many people have concussions or even more significant injuries from a whiplash injury, right? Your head flies forward, it flies back, and that's enough to cause an injury. The more fragile your health and your brain are, the less you need to hit your head to actually cause an injury. So a jolt to the body. I heard years and years ago about an older woman who, when you step off a stair or a curb and you're not expecting it to be there or as big as it was, and it catches you off guard and there's a jolt. I actually heard of someone who sustained a significant injury from that brain injury from that. Now, again, it was someone who had a fragile brain from health issues. So that's not going to happen to us when we're stepping off the stairs, but you never know what can cause it. Yeah. Falling down, having a grandchild or a child come running and jump on their lap and they hit their head together, the child, maybe they cry, maybe they don't, they run off eventually and they're fine, doesn't mean that it wasn't a big deal for the older adult that got hit. So a little bit more on...
When my grandson runs up to me and tries to jump on me, I tense up like this. I mean, I am just completely paralyzed, and please don't do this. And I'm going to tell him it's because we might bump heads, and I could get a really bad head injury from that.
Right. And so the form continues going through behavior. Just all different things that you should be thinking about when you're working with, when you're serving someone, and solutions that you can try. And then a reminder always to what do they want? How do they want to be reminded of things, and what do they think might work here, and bringing them into it. And then from this, we develop the strategies and accommodations tool so that now you have what you think the problem areas are. Now it's, well, what do we do about it? So these are just kind of reminders in each area. So for attention, maybe you have a visual reminder like a sticky note. And so just reminders, not that this is going to be everything that you could try, but for people who aren't used to thinking along the lines of strategy or accommodation, it can get you going, oh, okay, I can try something different. And then there's an initial key that is a reminder that of which, if there are other professionals on the case or available to you, who would be a good person to go to for that area. That information's there as well. And then, like I said, when we look at behavior, we want to be an adjunct to how you already look at it. So when someone's having difficulty, we come from it from the standpoint of what's their communication like, what's the communication demand of the situation, what's the cognitive demand. Now we have all this information we've gathered. What demands are being placed on people, because very often, not always, but very often, if you can ease the communication or the cognitive demand, or you can give them strategies, or you can calm the environment, you can get rid of the behavior. So we need to be looking at those things, and that's our orientation. That's where we would come from to talk to you about that.
Wendy, one of the things that kind of comes to mind with us, because we're very interested in trauma these days, and of course we're talking about traumatic brain injury. One of my experiences with people with traumatic brain injuries, a lot of times they're reasonably aware of their premorbid functioning, that what they were able to do beforehand and what they've lost now. And that's something else that just seems to kind of contribute to the trauma that they experience a lot of times. That maybe a lot of their frustration in these different sorts of circumstances that you're talking about.
Yes, very often. And very often they don't want to use strategies. They don't want to compensate. They want it to go back to they know what it was like. They don't want to compensate. So my approach to that always was, we're trying to solve right now, and it might get you to the point where you don't need to be using something, but I need them to be using it right now. They need to use it right now. So helping them to kind of go, this is a right now kind of thing. Usually when we can get them through that and they realize things are working, they're more likely to then continue using it for as long as they need to.
I've found families of people who are experiencing dementia a lot of times, it's probably, I think kind of a similar type of response. It's sort of like we want to go back to what we were before, not trying to deal with the situation that we have now. And that's a difficult adjustment for a lot of people to make.
It is, yes, it would be for many of us. Yeah, so just helping them through that and making it for me it was always, it's a for now thing or it's a safety net. We need to know that you've got something that can help you for right now. So we talk about behavior and how do you approach it from this? What are you looking for? What are you looking at? And then, again, giving cases. So this is a case that brings in some physical issues that were contributing to the behavior that wasn't the outburst behavior that he was having. So there's some physical things, there's some environmental things, and just how do you look at the whole thing and figure out what are we going to try here and how are we going to work with the person to solve this for them and with them. So we talk about those kinds of things.
It's interesting because one of the things we talk a lot about are executive functioning problems and different problems people have responding to requests and other things of that nature. Breaking it down, understanding the request that's being made and so forth seems to be a key thing with the folks that you're serving as well.
Yes. And we also talk about understanding our own behavior because there was this great study that was with adults and was in a psychiatric facility. So different. But what they found was that, and they were looking at aggressive behavior. And what they found was that it was the interaction before it that caused that aggressive behavior. So we really have a role in watching ourselves and being mindful of our body language. Thank you.
Body language. Yeah.
Our body language, as well as our actual words. So that, and we've got to know that. And if we know someone well enough, as we do over time when we work with people, we know their triggers. And we know, we know how to set them up, just like people in our life know how to set us off, and we need to not do that. So it's a reminder about all of those things as well. And some of these cases, I did several presentations now for direct service providers, and I said to them, send me some of your cases. I want to make this helpful for you. And so we pull in some of those. Like I said, brain health for me is just becoming so important because there's so many things that we do to harm our brains throughout our lives. And there's so many things that we can do to help it. And so we want to talk to people about these things. And so this is a module by itself as well. And we are have a slide coming up. We are doing this presentation for the Department of Child Services next week, the 14th, and then again on the 21st. And we're doing it for DCS, but it is not for just children. It's for everybody. So you're all welcome to join that. And then potentially we could come back on and talk about, well, how do you now incorporate this? How do you begin to kind of like a brainstorming, how do you bring food into it, and how do you bring in exercise and those kinds of things?
I know Department of Children's Services has the Building Strong Brains initiative that they've been operating for several years, really talking about some of the same things that you're talking about, but doing them at an early age and really helping a child have a brain that develops well. at that juncture. So not so much about traumatic brain injury, but about actually not doing those things could lead to lack of development in the brain and something similar to what you are dealing with.
Right. And earlier deterioration.
Right.
We're seeing so much more Alzheimer's disease and other kinds of dementias. How do we stop that? Because we can. It's not considered curable at this point, but it is considered preventable. So let's prevent it. Let's do that for all of us.
One other kind of just quick point, because you're talking about being social and getting stimulated and so forth, and it brings to mind the situation that we're all in now. We're all kind of coming here on an electronic platform. We're stowed away in our homes. This has a tremendous impact over the course of time on brain function. We have to figure out ways to meet those needs, even for the general population, not just those for traumatic brain injury, but probably more important for that group.
Yeah, and I believe that this would help. So if you're even over Zoom, it's still social, because the idea is we need to be processing information. If I'm sitting quietly by myself, I'm not processing anything, so I'm not using my brain to do that. I'm not formulating a response and coming up with the word to talk and give my response to you. So finding ways to be social even in this environment, so important. Yeah. My mom is in a independent living for older adults, and they've been on lockdown because COVID went through there. So she's on that phone all day long talking to people. I don't think she's doing this, but this would be even add another component to it, which would be awesome to have the visual component as well. So we talked about that. I just want to share a couple of green tea fun facts. So green tea.
Boom! Let's talk about green tea. That's great.
Green tea is neuroprotective and neurorestorative. So that means that it's neuroprotective. If you fall and hurt your brain while you have green tea in your system, it will help to protect you. I'm not going to say it's going to protect you from a major car accident or anything like that, but it is going to help you. And it will also help to restore your brain if you take it in afterwards, if you use it as part of your recovery. So we'll just share.
I did a smart thing by drinking some green tea.
You're protecting yourself from your grandson, Bruce.
Yeah, whenever he comes over, I'm going to drink some green tea first. But I drank some just prior to this presentation today, so that helps me, I think, too.
Excellent.
We'll probably be more engaged.
Yeah, and there's lots that you can do with it. I know lots of people don't like the flavor, but there's lots of things that you can do
with it. It also, I learned, reduces inflammation, which is great for your arthritis as well.
Yes, and your brain helps for reducing inflammation throughout the whole body, including the brain. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep. So this is just another example of, we talked about sleep as part of this whole brain health, and talked to you about strategies and honing in on what helps to keep you up at night. And the brain, we need to sleep because that helps to clear the brain of toxins. So we need to do that. So just to give you a flavor of what we might talk about. And then the webinar series, we are on our fourth in a series with DCS. And like I said, you're all invited to attend the one on July 14th or the one on July 21st, where we'll be talking about brain health. And then a couple of resources, the Job Accommodation Network, you might already be familiar with, but they have some tools that can be used for helping people go back to work, help to think of strategies or accommodations. It means the same thing, same general thing. And they go through specific diagnoses. It's not just brain injury, and then, or you can look at it from a limitation. Well, I know this person has a memory problem, so let me look at it from that perspective. And then, best kept secret in Tennessee, the service coordination program. We have 8 service coordinators that are also a free service in Tennessee. So if you have someone with complex traumatic brain injury needs, they can help you. They can help to figure out providers or just all different kinds of issues. And so we can help to get you in contact with them as well. And then
let me pause on that just for a second, Wendy, if we could. I know we're running a little bit short on time, but I think we can get there. This is an important piece because a lot of times we get people referred to our services, and for one reason or another, maybe their traumatic brain injury occurred after the developmental period. So they're an adult. Maybe they're 23 years old and they just had a car wreck or, whatever may have caused their brain injury, and they're not eligible for our services because the disability occurred after the developmental period. And so it's really important to be aware of this type of resource in order to be able to try to get that person some services that may be effective for them in that circumstance.
Yes, that would be outstanding. And then this is essentially, I have some information on how to reach us and where to look for things, but so that's essentially the last slide where I just wanted to talk about if you had any questions for us or how we might work together to bring some of these things to you. And this is just a reminder of some of the key things that we would can talk and support you with.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I can see from, just looking through this list of topics here that there'd be several things that would be of great importance. And we have a number of people like in our system who have persistent falls. They're falling a lot, and we're constantly trying to look for solutions, but also, being able to try to understand what the impact of that is over the course of time. It's like a lot of things. You get kind of accustomed to what somebody typically does, and then it starts to lose its significance over time, whereas those things may be having a cumulative effect that you really need to be paying attention to. I want to open it up to our folks out here to see if there are any questions from our group that's listening in today. If you're out there and want to ask a question, just take yourself off of mute and come on and ask.
Hey, this is Phil Garner. Just wondering, are neuropsychological evaluations as popular as they used to be once upon a time? And if they are, is there anyone locally in the Middle Tennessee area that's doing those?
Yes, and yes. So what we talk about, one of the things we talk about is that the neuropsychological eval is the gold standard for traumatic brain injury. That is really going to be where you're going to get some great information about all areas of cognition, lots of information on visual perception, all kinds of things. So if you're trying to understand what's happening better, then that is the person that you want to go to. And there are some people in Middle Tennessee. Off the top of my head, I can't give you names, but if you want to email me, that's me in the middle there. If you want to email me, I can send you some names.
I'll tell you what, Wendy, if you wouldn't mind, if you would send that list to Michelle and I so that we could distribute it to our group, would that be okay? Or if we had that for this?
Sure. Right now, it will be a limited list. I'll give you just a few that I know in this area. However, we have an intern that is just starting to work with us, Monique, and she is going to be compiling a list of neuropsychologists and counselors with some familiarity with brain injury across the state.
As she's doing that, one of the things I might suggest is that she would identify neuropsychologists particularly interested in working with this population, with the IBD population, and might be aware of some of the kind of idiosyncrasies from this group. I'm not saying that any neuropsychologist, I think, would have the skills to be able to assess this, but if you're aware of IBD and how that operates and so forth, I think it would put you in a stronger position, or if you had a lot of cases that you worked with in this particular area. We had a person named Susan Bott, actually, for many years here in Middle Tennessee, actually throughout the state, and we were contracted with her to provide those services. She moved off to Kentucky a few years ago, and we haven't been able to use her as much, but she was very familiar with, worked a lot with people with autism spectrum disorders and IDD, and so it put her in a particular strength as it related to working with our group. But we'd like the list of any neuropsychologist that would be available to serve people. We just that's just an interesting specialty, I think.
Yes. And Paula just posted the Tennessee's resource directory, TBI resource directory. We know that it is limited, which is why we are trying to compile more and get people interested and get their information in there. But you can also go there.
Well, Phil's already responded. Awesome information.
Thank you, Phil.
Actually, he said awesome info, but I think he meant awesome information.
Thank you.
Phil is the director of Buffalo River Services, one of our great agencies down in lower middle Tennessee.
Excellent.
All right. Any other questions? Well, Wendy, I just want to tell you how much we appreciate you coming on and doing this for us today. I appreciate Paula and your other people who are working with you too. This has been a really great presentation. There were so many things that you had. I know you had to try to fit this within an hour, especially with all my interruptions. But there were so many good resources that you hit on throughout the course of this presentation. I know people are going to want to go back and see all those things on your website and determine how they could be useful to them. I think a lot of those checklists are things really probably would do you good for a lot of the people that you serve out there to go and get and just work your way through those checklists, because I think they might be very informative and might help you a lot in developing your supports for people. So thank you so much for everything that you're doing to educate people about this.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you so much for the opportunity to come and talk about it, and we'd be happy to come and talk more in depth on any of those topics at any time.
Right. So you would go to an individual agency if they had an audience that they wanted you to speak to about any of those topics, right? Or maybe if there was a collection of agencies, is there a number of people that you want to have for one of those types of things, or?
No, certainly the more the better from our standpoint. Yeah. We'd also love to create some things that can be just standing that anybody can access at any time. Something that will live on as well.
Yeah. So, and Paul was pointing out here, you provide professional staff development, ongoing training. So it's sort of like a workforce development thing. Absolutely. I think that's great. Yeah. And really, anybody working in this field needs to understand more about how the brain operates, how it has an impact on people and how they respond to things and different sorts of things. Like you were talking about attention. A lot of times we're upset with people because they're not paying good enough attention to things, not attending to something I might be talking to them about, and understanding that that's part of the way the brain is operating, not a defiant behavior that the person's engaging in. Is a really
exactly
thing. So such good information, such great stuff that you guys are doing. Really appreciate you. And this is the Clinical Consultation Network. We do this every Tuesday, 12:30 Central. I hope people continue to join us. I hope y'all will return sometime and maybe tackle one of these other specific topics that you have. Really appreciate it. So come back and see us next week, 12:30 Central Time, Clinical Consultation Network. Thank you for being here, everybody.